Hey guys, SuperHorrorBro Mike here, and in today's Bendy and the Ink Machine video, we take a look at the mind-bending ending to Chapter 5 and see if we can make sense of it all. In this video, we will be looking at all major aspects of the game's ending, which has left many fans scratching their heads in confusion. Let's begin the video by breaking down exactly what happened during the final moments of Bendy Chapter 5. After reaching a gigantic ink machine deep beneath the studio, Henry ventures inside and discovers a projection room with a film reel titled The End. An audio log from Joey Drew instructs Henry to play this last reel in order to show Bendy his ending, and when Henry manages to do this after Bendy makes a grotesque and horrifying transformation, he banishes the ink demon once and for all. After this, Henry finds himself in Joey Drew's apartment, where he is greeted by the man himself. At this point, Joey instructs Henry to check out the old workshop, which leads us back to the beginning of the game. There is one final cutscene after this, which reveals a little girl speaking to her uncle Joey, as we focus in on a framed picture sent from Henry to Joey, which reveals Henry's last name, Stein. Okay, so quite a lot to work with, right? Let's begin this analysis with a bombshell. I believe the entirety of Henry's adventure, aside from this final scene with Joey, takes place in an alternate reality. A cartoon reality to be precise, meaning the version of Joey Drew Studios Henry has been exploring is not part of a real world. Why would I think this? The most obvious explanation can clearly be seen in the end sequence where Henry explores Joey's apartment. The visual style is much more realistic here. Look at the objects on this shelf, for example. We see Joey's book, The Illusion of Living, a Bendy plushie, a wrench, a record, an inkwell, and a gear. All items Henry uses in the ritual process, but they look far more cartoony in the workshop to the ones found in the real world here. The same can be said for the pictures on the walls, and the textures on the environment are far more detailed and lifelike compared to the cartoonish appearance of the studio environments. So, if Henry's reality during the game is not the same as ours, how did this come to be, and why does he have no memory of the old world he lived in? Well, here comes bombshell number 2. Henry is dead. It seems far-fetched at first, but let me explain why this makes a whole lot of sense. Throughout the studio, we can see coffins, and these coffins, when using Henry's fancy new detector device, show the names of past employees at the studio: Norman Polk, Grant Cohen, Bertram Piedmont, and Lacey Benton. We know that our past theories about Joey using the souls of his workers at the studio to bring his cartoon creations to life is correct, as we hear very strong hints towards this in his audio logs from Chapter 5.
I'm paying for living attractions, not weird abominations. And in response to your previous memo, if you claim that your failures are because these things are soulless, then damn it, we'll give them a soul. After all, I own thousands of them.
It seems like Joey was using his workers as some kind of twisted human experimentation. He talks here as if he owns them. Thomas Connor also speaks of how originally the cartoons were meant to be simple creations, made from templates ran through the ink machine.
What started as a machine to simply mold life-size figures now seems to be teetering on the edge of magic more than engineering.
But after that birthed Demon Bendy, Joey realised these characters did in fact need a soul if they were going to have any kind of personality at all. Susie Campbell was the first worker to be transformed, which eventually created the character of Alice Angel in real life, though a less than perfect version. And we know she did this voluntarily after Joey manipulated her into going through with the procedure, promising she could become the character she was so in love with.
Now he wants to meet again tomorrow? Says he has an opportunity for me? I'll hear him out.
I know how much this part means to you, Susie. Alice means a lot to me, too. I want you to bring Alice to life once again. What do you say?
This procedure of being reborn via the ink machine required the person in question to be killed, it seems, hence the coffins, which eventually reanimated these people into twisted cartoon versions of their former selves. But how does this factor into Henry's death and rebirth though? Well, one big clue comes from looking at Henry's bed through the looking glass in Chapter 5. This reveals a coffin where Henry would have slept, and these secret messages have been left, we must assume, by Henry himself. More on this and Henry's mystical contraption later. So, if Henry has been killed, this explains why he could be reborn in the cartoon world, a world created by the giant ink machine seen at the chapter's end. The small ink machine creating characters such as Boris clones, which feature the spirits of workers such as Wally Franks and Thomas Connor, and the bigger one able to act like a living projector, which has created an entirely new cartoon reality inside Joey Drew Studios. A reality Henry is now trapped inside, and this certainly helps to explain why Henry can fall from such great heights and survive a plummet down a near never-ending elevator shaft. The laws of physics here are cartoonish and not like those found in the real world. Let me explain the sequence of events here. Henry receives a note from Joey Drew, his old friend and work partner who he hasn't seen in 30 years. He turns up at Joey's house where it is evident Mr. Drew has gone through massive financial hardship after his studio and theme park Bendyland were forced to close. Something which we have been alerted to many times throughout the game. Joey tells Henry to visit the old workshop, knowing that he is going to meet his end inside and become reborn within the cartoon reality the ink machine has created. This is the only way Joey can think of to stop his monstrous creation, Demon Bendy. A creation that has no soul and so terrorized anyone it came into contact with, and a creation which grows ever more powerful and continues to evolve into a number of horrifying guises. So once again Joey Drew lures a victim in with false promises and betrays them in order to get what he needs. In this case, his old pal Henry, who was manipulated just like Susie Campbell and the rest of the workers all those years ago. The hidden messages found on a second playthrough only reinforce this theory. Henry finds he has written sentences such as "Creator Traitor" and "Joey lied to us," and if we backtrack to Joey's apartment once again, we can see letters from characters such as Alison Pendle, who appears to now be married to Thomas Connor, and Wally Franks. These letters sound like they have been written in good spirits from ex-employees of Joey, most likely due to hearing of the studio's closure. And we know from the game's credits that Alison and Tom were in fact the Alice and Boris clones which accompany Henry during Chapter 5. It seems probable Joey had lured them in under false pretense, just as he did with Henry. However, none of these characters, including Henry, seem to have much of a memory as to how they arrived at the studio.
I was invited by an old friend, and now I can't leave.
Then you know more than we do. 1 minute, we don't even exist, and the next minute, this place.
This is because the rebirth process essentially seems to wipe a person's prior memory, leaving them with little of their previous mind intact. Look here at this message from a lost one. It reads, "I still remember my name," as if all other memories have now been erased. Two things you're probably wondering is how on earth Henry has written messages to himself, and why the game essentially begins over after we complete it. This is the final point to tackle in today's theory, and one of the biggest. We've talked about how Henry is now living in an alternate cartoon reality, a reality where he can be reborn from the ink and things look and work a little differently to the world we all know. Well, this world seems to work exactly the same way as a regular cartoon would. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then if Henry reaches the end, much like a cartoon, it begins over again. Henry plays the final reel, titled The End. This destroys Bendy, but also destroys everything else. When loaded into the ink machine, which acts essentially as the device bringing everyone and everything in this world to life, playing the ending does just that. It ends the world. But then the machine resets, brings everyone back to life, and plays the story from the beginning. Sometimes Henry clings to memories of previous adventures in this never-ending loop and notes them down. He has created a device that allows him to create a secret trail for himself in the hope that one day he will find a different way to play things out and finally set himself and everyone else free from this inky prison. Remember when Sammy Lawrence said he felt like he remembered Henry, even though Henry had never worked with him?
Wait, you look familiar to me. That face.
He remembers Henry because he has experienced this scene before, and every time he loses and is killed by Demon Bendy. These memories are unclear, much like the screaming well of voices Susie spoke about in Chapter 3.
Do you know what it's like living in the dark puddles? It's a buzzing, screaming well of voices.
And this explains Henry's occasional visions, where his world distorts and bends around him. These visions are a form of deja vu, fragments of his past adventures splintering back into sight for a brief moment, tears in the very fabric of his mind. This also explains why the Lost Ones seem so confused and hopeless, and why they attack in Chapter 5. Their memories are in tatters and they're scared and confused. Sensing any kind of threat, they will attack on sight to protect themselves, but are not inherently bad. As for the little girl at the end, I believe this is likely to be Henry's child, as she refers to Joey as Uncle Joey.
Tell me another one, Uncle Joey.
As they were once close friends, Joey may have felt compelled to be part of her life after her father never returned. I do not believe this to be Linda, however, as Henry referenced Linda in a recording during Chapter 3 when he was still at the studio 30 years ago.
I haven't seen Linda for days now.
The girl here sounds very young, and so Linda was more logically Henry's wife, and this is their daughter. So, to conclude, Joey duped Henry into revisiting the old workshop after being gone for 30 years. He did this so Henry would meet his end and be reborn into a cartoon world where Bendy and his other experiments had gotten out of hand. Joey Drew was trying to create a living cartoon and characters which would put his failed theme park Bendyland back on the map. It would have been his colossal wonder. But his research had gone too far, with a machine that literally brought to life a cartoon world and not just the characters as originally intended. Now Henry is trapped in a sort of cartoon purgatory, a never-ending loop that he cannot escape from until he finds a way to end the story differently. Of course, this is a very simple explanation, and I could go into way more detail and expand on various points here. I plan to do this in future videos, but this has been my personal interpretation of the ending of Bendy Chapter 5. Maybe you have a different opinion, or maybe you do agree with this theory. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And that's it for today's video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy watching, and maybe drop a comment too, as well as subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you never miss an upload. This channel specializes in variety horror content, including creepypasta readings, horror gaming facts and theories, and general interest pop culture horror videos. So if you're interested in all things spooky, you'll find something to enjoy here at SuperHorrorBro. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.